So thank you very much, Anshu. It's a powerful presentation. I want to invite to the stage Goonj co-founder Meenakshi, please. And can we have another round of applause? So in terms of just kind of giving us a bit of a frame for the discussion here, I want to first of all just kind of put a fine point on this and issue a bit of a challenge. These are two of the world's most remarkable social innovators. And this crowd, this launch council, is a relatively business-oriented one, and that's a good thing. But we've made a very fine point in launch of also wanting to assist remarkable social innovators. So this is going to challenge this group to think very differently. Because this organization is about social innovation, and it's a nonprofit, and it is going to remain a nonprofit. So just with that as a frame, I think I want to try and draw out a couple, basic points back from the presentation. So first, I think as the bottom line, I think for us as we were preparing with you all over the past few days, I think it's that you used waste streams as a lever for economic and social transformation. And that you really find lost value in Indian society of all different kinds and use it to transform just opportunities for communities. I mean, can you just expand a little bit on that as your philosophy and kind of, and that concept and build it out a little bit for us?
I think what we have done is, there's nothing new because this is an age-old charity. The moment you talk about charity for 90% people is about giving old cloth. Although we differ, we say that whenever you say that I want to donate cloth, that's actually a wrong and overstatement because you never donate, you actually discard. Anything which you have already used to the core, how can you actually say that you are donating? Also, in the entire process, we have just valued the system. We have just valued the strength of people. So biggest strength not only in Indian society but many other society is the wisdom of people for whom we work and we never use. Because we always go to people with our own wisdom, whatever we have acquired with the help of our education and ecosystem or whatever, without understanding that these people are also surviving for the last 500 years at the same place, and they have no complaints that way. We want them to change because we want the world to change, in a very cliche statement. But the fact remains that they are happy. They enjoy their festivals. Fine, they go through a very tough phase, but there is wisdom. They are the best people to understand that how to manage the resources. They are the best people in terms of technology because the people of that particular village only know that in the month of July how much water will come. So if I have to make a bridge, how should it look like? What should be the height? So that's why I think these things are successful. And that's what we want to do. We want to, in Indian history, one of the biggest assets we used to have was, in Hindi we call it Shramdan, which means free labor, which means community labor. That was the biggest asset. If you talk about the entire freedom movement and later development and all, that's how people used to contribute. We have been able to revive that in the entire process. So I think that's the core philosophy, and we want to remain like a social enterprise, and we want people to become a part of it because it is ultimately a social movement.
Thank you. So I want to focus a little bit on impact, and I've backed us up to your impact slide. This presentation was head-spinning in those terms because you talked about that your baseline budget is $500,000, and this is what you achieve with it. And it was probably a little bit overwhelming for people to hear because this is impact across a bunch of different streams of activities. And for me, the first thing to say here is that you all absolutely blow up the traditional NGO model. And that's really powerful. So I think, can you talk about impact across kind of various sectors of the social, of social sectors? It's kind of hard to put it into adequate words because, you don't really see sectoral work in a siloed way the way most organizations do. So just take us through impact at the community level across kind of different ways we think of in traditional sectors.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think what you see here is what you can possibly, sort of figure out in numbers, but there are different dimensions. So the bridge that you saw or the water cleaning, the pond cleaning that you see. I mean, those are the things that if you talk about a pond, for example, now for a community who's living next to the pond, if you have a water which is more accessible, certainly for agricultural purposes, for their day-to-day work, for different functions, that particular pond cleaning suddenly starts working in different ways. A bridge built on a river for which they had to earlier walk like 20 kilometers, they suddenly have a bridge, and so that opens up different dimensions. They're able to do better business, they have more interaction, children are able to go to schools. So those dimensions, I mean, we couldn't possibly capture enough to be able to put on a slide, really. And the third thing, I think that's what Anshu was trying to highlight, is the human dimension. When you talk about empowering people, when we get a community to repair a road or build a road, suddenly, or when they dig a well for themselves, suddenly they understand that they don't have to wait for anyone to come and solve their problems, that they can solve their problems themselves. Or they even, in many cases, they actually have gone to the local administration and said, look, we dug up this basic well. Now, can you come and make it concrete? So they start demanding their rights from the governance. So those are the things that, I don't think we can capture enough.
Also, I think there is one thing, this is one work which does not apply to one particular geography, one particular caste, community, or one particular area of work. So this is not like education, water, agriculture, those kind of specific things. Because we need to understand that in the developing nations primarily, people need a comprehensive package somewhere, where, because if you go to a village and just solve the water problem, ultimately the fact remains that it is not solved. I mean, you must have heard this very often, in a disaster hit situation, people often say that villages have got water because a tanker is gone and supplied water, without understanding that the villagers do not have a pot to hold water. So the tanker goes there and tanker goes out and comes back next day. As per record, village got water. But when you do not have anything to hold, how do you get water? So I think what we have done, we have just made it a comprehensive package that do not take us as a different or as a new organization or as a new entity. We are only here to fill up the gaps. This is something where the old material is a tool. Is a tool for education, for village development, for water-related work, for agriculture, anything and everything which is needed in that particular area or that particular village.
Great, thanks. So I want to take us just to talking a little bit about the needs that you want to kind of workshop and talk about today with the council. So for you, as we've been talking about it, I'm actually going to hone in on the second point first. As we've been talking about it over the past few days, you've been emphasizing that your interest is growing not only as an organization, but mostly as an idea in terms of knowledge sharing and spreading your methods. So tell us a little bit about that, because I really do think there are people in the room who can help with that.
Now we have just tested a model, tried that, and it is working well. So there is no reason that it does not work in many other economies across the globe. It's very simple. That's why we need a powerful documentation. We need a lot of stories to come out. We want it to become a subject so that ultimately it dents the policy. I mean, you can imagine when I spoke about sanitary pad in 2004, 2005, there was nothing. Today, even Indian government has realized the entire thing, and they have also released a major amount in terms of a government scheme to provide sanitary pad to the people. So I think there are a lot of issues across the globe where people are working, but I always say that enough of people who are working on machines. Now you need people who work on the needles also. So when you talk about the women health related issues, ultimately sanitary pad is one of the most ignored basic needle. I mean, you can imagine in 2007 we won an award from the World Bank, that Global Development Marketplace Award. We were there, and there were a lot of issues on sustainability, measurability, impact assessment, and all. All those typical buzzwords of today, which are important. But then we raised a very basic question. We said that you guys are the biggest funders on this earth. Fine. How many health projects have you ever funded which had a separate budget for sanitary pad? No answer. How many health projects have you ever seen which had a mention of sanitary pad? No answer. Now, if I ask you, that do you really need a qualitative, quantitative research or analysis? Or is just a basic common sense that if you solve the problem of sanitary pad, half of women health related issues will not even come up? Am I wrong? That's what we just want to do. And that's why this entire knowledge sharing, this, so that it becomes a part of the academics, people start studying these gap areas. That's why we are keen on this.
Great. And as a really quick point, I think you have technology inputs as a first point, which I think speaks to this, both in terms of kind of monitoring and documentation, but also I think you've expressed that as part of improving your supply chain operations across the different activities, that you really feel like there's some potential in the room that can help with that. So we'll focus on that in the rotations. I want to give the council a chance now. I will go first to Conde, then to Scott, and then to Tabriz. And I've seen a bunch of hands, so I'll ask you again to put hands up when we get past these questions. Thanks.
Have you been able to do your sanitary pad as a presentation for UNICEF and WHO? Second, your model seems to depend a lot on culture, the culture of your people to do community service. Given that requirement, how do you see this replicable internationally? Third point is that I see in West Africa, for example, a big challenge and fight with those who are making millions out of the used clothes business. And finally, thanks for embarrassing me, I distributed some free clothing in my village. And the adults were fighting with the kids. They were meant for the kids. But I realize now I did the wrong thing. I should have done it your style.
Fine. So, people are watching us. We are a part of, we were just recently invited for the WASH Forum also in India when it happened. So, people are understanding the work, and a lot of people from all these big agencies are also coming and just seeing our production and the way we work. So that is one. Culture, to be honest, we are not very much worried. You know why? Because if you see India is mix of so many cultures, so many dimensions. Every single state has absolutely different kind of people and the way they react. So it is one of the finest lab, to experiment. And what you say, we are facing on a regular basis. Someone does not want to receive old cloth because of a caste community system. Somewhere there is a strong opinion leader, that's why there is a barrier. Somewhere there is political system which does not want us to grow in that particular region, then there is a system. So, but I think we have been able to break all these, somewhere very quick, somewhere we certainly took a lot of time to break, just on a very basic issue, because ultimately we are talking about the basic needs of people, which is ultimately a basic need. You can talk a lot about, even in India, people say in certain parts that, in tribal culture, women do not wear anything on the top. In a country where for 99.99% women, the first priority is to cover herself, fine. You need to understand that if the tribal woman is not covering herself at a certain point, is the issue of access to the material. Not just the culture. What is culture? When you practice everything again and again, it becomes a culture. Why do you practice? Because there is compulsion.
Scott?